Well, hello there. This is Virtual Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video talking about why the Wayward Queen attack was simply not very good and you needed to stop playing it out of the beginner level. Now, in that last game, I did play against someone who was rather lower rated than me, so maybe that doesn't seem very fair. Well, I have another game of the Wayward Queen attack, a bit unusual in that my opponent is rated about the same as me, so in the sort of the lower intermediate level. I think they knew what they were doing, and we will have a look at the tactics around the Wayward Queen attack, including why it's a bit problematic. But this game also had a great middle game, really interesting tactics, so I think you will enjoy it. Let's go take a look. Now, I've got the black pieces, my opponent, of course, with white. They played a Wayward Queen attack, but they lead with the bishop's opening. So e4, e5, bishop to c4. Very, very good. I always usually play the queen's knight and inviting them to go into an Italian. But they play the Wayward Queen, effectively trying to get an immediate scholar's mate. Very simple. g6, attack on the queen. Queen should probably go all the way back, but here the queen goes to f3. Now, one of the things which is, I think, maybe catches beginners a little bit, well, gives them a wrong impression, is that when you play the Wayward Queen, it looks like Stockfish is okay with it. Like, at low depth, it's basically equal. Even at high depth analysis, it's only about minus 0.2, maybe minus 0.3. So it looks like it's fine. However, that evaluation is only the case if you play extremely accurately, and more than that, you're willing at a moment's notice to abort the Wayward Queen and to undevelop the queen back to d1. Only if you are willing to do that will the evaluation stay mostly equal, no worse than -1. So let's see. So here, in this position, I now need to develop that knight, obviously, because otherwise there is that attack here, once again, on my f7 pawn. So knight to f6. Here, white needs to prevent my queen's knight from going to d4, a very powerful square. And so knight to e2 is best, so you may not want the knight in that position. Potentially, you could also play c3, though again, you might not want the pawn in that position. In this game, they actually developed the queen's knight, and you can see that is an inaccuracy, and here it's -1 because we have a knight to a d4 with an attack on the queen, attack on c2, and here it's only -1, it's no worse than -1 if white is willing to abort the attack. They have to undevelop the queen. In this game, my opponent, who I think is a little bit more familiar with some of the tactics around the Wayward Queen, knew that and did undevelop their queen, -1. And here you can see some of the problems, in fact, with the Wayward Queen attack. You do a speculative attack, maybe you have a chance to win, but it's not too difficult to deflect. And at the end here, we're sort of still possibly just in, a few moves into the opening. They're already -1, a little bit of a disadvantage, and also they have lost advantage in terms of development. Because they had to move their queen several times, black has a fairly major advantage in development, which means white really now needs to consolidate and try to make it into the middle game. All right, so I first decided to fianchetto my bishop, given that I was forced to play g6. White now develops their knight, and I really wanted them to potentially to take my knight this way. So what I did was a fairly sneaky trick, not the most accurate, but it worked out for me, which is to jump forward with my knight to g4, a very aggressive posture, look like it's attacking the f2 pawn. Of course, there's no backup there because that dark square bishop has been fianchetto, so can't get into that position. But here, what I was hoping that white will see is captures, which is what they took. You can see it's actually an inaccuracy. They would think they can capture. Yes, it's defended, but it looks like I've hung my knight. I hope they would see it. They did see it. but it's actually a mistake. It's not hanging because after captures, the queen can't actually take. Here they did take. It's a mistake. And now, in fact, I think we're back to about minus 1.5, minus 1.6. So I've got a very, very nice advantage. Why is that the case? Now, this tactic that I'm going to show you quite commonly occurs with black against the Wayward Queen attack. So always keep an eye out for it. And that is D5. D5, the pawn attacks the bishop on C4, opens up that diagonal, and so now we reveal a discovered attack of the light square bishop on the queen. Double attack means they will definitely lose the bishop. In this game, it basically means that I've traded one of my knights for their bishops, but in other situations where you don't lose a piece first, you straight up win a piece in the opening, and basically you're winning. Here, queen moves yet another time. I take the bishop. Notice the massive loss of tempo relatively with the queen shuffling forward, backwards and forwards along that diagonal. Still got a attack on the knight. Knight jumps here. Now the best move here, which I didn't see in the game, is immediately d3, challenging, with that fork. So they take here, take with queen, basically inviting a trade, captures, and in this position, we're doing really well. We've got just much better development. We're ready to castle. We've got a nice fianchetto bishop, lines open for our bishop. This very, very forward pawn, though we may well lose that pawn. While white, they've got this funny hole, on their C file. Here, black is doing great. So that would have been the best move. However, I didn't see that and I decided to short castles in this position. And here, for both white and black, the critical thing was actually taking the d3 square. Neither of us saw it, and so the next few moves are all rated mistakes by the engine. So they short castles. I now develop my bishop. They now push that pawn. You can see that for both of us, d3 was best. But here, this gives me d3, so I take that square. They now bring their knight in this position, and here I make a mistake. I play queen to f6, thinking I've got a double attack on the knight. Best move was queen to d6 because they've got knight to d5, which comes with a fork of the queen and the c7 square. So once again, knight to d4 or knight to d5, they're powerful squares for the knight. I didn't see that myself. Luckily, they didn't see it either. And in fact, here I won a concession by them moving forward their g-pawn to g3, weakening the defense of their king. But more than that, it also means that their white queen is now undefended, which makes this knight pinned. Unfortunately, in this move, I didn't recognize that. So the best move is to place pressure on the pinned piece, immediately winning the knight. However, I didn't see that. I decided to play the bishop first. You can see I lose some of the advantage with an attack on the rook. Rook moves, but in this position, I did see the pinned knight. So g5, happy days. But unfortunately, with the bishop there, it's not a straight out win because they've got queen to h5, which now attacks the bishop. It's unpinned the knight. So take the knight, they take the bishop, and we play on. Here, the position is really complicated. So for me, it looked like taking would be the best move, opening things up, defended by the bishop. Stockfish doesn't agree. Stockfish thinks that moving the king here is best. In this position after captures, however, I do move the king here, but they call that a mistake, and moving the bishop to d6 is best. It's a complicated position, I will say. Here, we're back to equality. 0-0-0. So interesting tactics in the middle game, and my opponent is easily, I think, as good as me on average. So it's not surprising we get back to equality. All right, they move the king forward, defending everything. Again, that seems to make sense to me. Put the rook onto the h-file, battery to attack the king. That makes a lot of sense. And yet Stockfish calls it a mistake, wants to make this push. Now, let's think about that. the reason this is apparently a mistake is that black is fast enough. They've got so 1 or 2 tempo, maybe slightly ahead. So this is completely defensible for black. And so Stockfish just doesn't believe in that attack. On the other hand, b3, firstly, of course, it does attack, it potentially destabilizes the pawn. But the other important thing is that it allows this bishop to develop, which then also activates the other rook and connects the rook. So that's why that was so critical for them to move. But, this move here makes sense. Trying to create a battery. Sometimes a simple forcing move, creating the tactical resource, allows you to win in the sort of longer and medium term. In fact, this is what's going to happen with me. So I see this, and so I move the rook onto the g file. Okay, here they're lining up the battery. Now Stockfish reckons moving the queen here is better, but I was thinking, let's move the rook to g7. You can see we're basically back to equality. But I wanted to double up my rooks to form a rook battery on the g file. They now find that move. I now form that battery. It's speculative. Stockfish called it speculative, but I think this is a really good move, a really good attack, because there's now 3 attackers onto that g3 pawn. And here it's only equality if white finds the right move, which is quite obscure actually. It's actually queen to f5, trading queens and potentially doubling their f pawns. So this is definitely not an obvious move to make. It's one of the reasons why you need to take Stockfish evaluations sometimes with a grain of salt. So this was only a mistake because white has this move, but this move is, I would argue, reasonably inhuman. All right. Against this overwhelming pressure, white freaks out and they move their king back here. And this is a blunder. I think it's about -9, -9, almost -10. Here, they're practically losing. And you can see they had to, that was the best move. Potentially here, they only lose about -1 or something like that. But it's a very tricky position for white to play. This is a mistake because that pawn is pinned to the king, doesn't defend. So I can now take with the bishop, immediate mate threat. Now they trade queens, captures, and now, bang, bishop to h2. You think, isn't that hanging? No, it's not hanging, because if they capture, then this will be back rank mate. This whole file is covered, this whole rank is covered, and this square covered by that forward d pawn. So forward pawns are often surprisingly powerful at trapping the enemy king. So they've got a serious back rank mate problem. So this bishop is actually immortal. Here they push that, kind of makes sense. And here I was starting to run out of time. So the best move here actually is a rook to the g1 with check. And here they actually cannot take that rook. I can win that rook. I probably don't even need to do that because if they do take the rook, it's basically almost mate, because after captures, let's say they make another move, I now have bishop all the way down here, and again, it's almost mate. Let's say just make another move. Potentially they could, block the check, but it just delays it by a move, because here that is mate. Now I didn't see that tactical pattern in the game, and I was starting to run a bit out of time, and so here we go. So I played, rook to g2. So here, as I was running time, you can see I almost had 5 minutes. I spent some time, I couldn't quite work out what to do. So eventually I decided I'll do what I know is heuristically a good idea, which is to try to get my rooks onto the second rank. So rooks on the second and the seventh are very, very powerful. Probably get both rooks onto the second rank, and then I should be able to mate, given that the king is potentially trapped. So that's what I was thinking. So they sort of make a capture, that's fine. Here, rook here, allowing for my other rook. They now play the bishop. Here, rook to g3 is best because then I can capture the f-pawn with check. Well, here is a little bit different because they can block that way. All right, so I capture. Here, they try to, I have to be careful myself. That's fine. Let's trade a set of rooks. Captures back this way. And now the goal is to promote that pawn. So that shouldn't be too difficult. They've got no moves to make. That's fine. Here we go. Potentially, we can capture that way. They gave a check. That's fine. On a light square now, no more checks. And here with the skewer, the king has to come this way if they want to recapture my pieces. Captures. Because it's in the wrong place, that bishop, pawn moves forward. Promotion is unavoidable. They capture queen. They make one more move. But here, staring at defeat, obviously the queen can easily capture all their pawns. None of their pawns are passed pawns. Game is over, and they opt to resign. Good game, GG. The big takeaway is that at the intermediate level, you've got to stop playing the Wayward Queen Attack at some point. And even if you choose to play it sometimes for fun, it only really works if you are willing to abort the attack when it's not working. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.